Ah, there you are, settled in, ready for the quiet rhythm of a night's rest. No need to rush. Nothing needs to be done now except to listen, to breathe, and to drift. You've already done the hard part. All you have to do now is let go just a little bit more with each breath. So let's begin the slow descent, shall we? Gently, carefully. I'm here with you, not in a hurry, but moving at a pace that suits us both. Imagine yourself lying down, perhaps your feet tucked under a warm blanket, your body comfortably sinking into the softness of your bed. Feel the weight of the day lifting bit by bit until you're left with nothing but the present moment, as quiet as a candle flame flickering in a still room. Let's take a few breaths, slow and easy. Breathe in deeply through your nose, feeling the air fill your lungs nice and calm. And now, breathe out through your mouth, letting the tension slip away. Feel how your body softens with every exhale, like a woolen sweater unwinding gently in the breeze. And dot, dot, and out. Like the ocean, each wave, no rush, just flow. There's no hurry here, nothing to catch. Nothing to do but sink a little deeper into the peace of it all. Breathe in, dot, dot, and out. That's it, just like that. You're not racing towards sleep. Oh, no, we're moving like a slow river winding its way through the hills, passing by in its own time with no thought of the clock. Let yourself soften like the warmth that wraps around you when you come in from a chilly evening. Your body, your mind, your heart, all slowly letting go. The weight of your shoulders, the little flutter of your thoughts, all those things that feel so heavy during the day, we'll leave them behind, tucked away like a book on a shelf. And so, my dear listener, let yourself settle even deeper into this moment. Sleep is waiting just a little further down the path, and we've plenty of time to get there together. Now, as we settle into the rhythm of the evening, let me take you to a place where time seems to stretch out like the soft folds of an old quilt. A place where nothing happens in a rush. Can you imagine it? A quiet little village tucked away from the bustling world where the days unfold as slow and peaceful as the clouds drifting across the sky. The village is small, so small that you can almost see from one end to the other, but that's part of its charm. It's nestled deep in the valley, surrounded by gentle hills that rise and fall like the slow, steady breath of the earth itself. The stone cottages here are weathered but sturdy, their walls thick and welcoming, holding in the warmth of the fires inside. The roofs are covered in thatch, soft and mossy, like the cap of an old, wise friend. Even the chimneys are bent and crooked, but they stand proud, puffing out small, curling clouds of smoke, as if to say, everything's just fine here. No need to rush, and in this village the pace is, well, it's slow. The streets are narrow, but not in a way that feels crowded. No, the roads wind gently through the hills, leading from one house to the next, but always at a pace that feels like it's waiting for you to catch up. There's no hustle and bustle, no cars zooming by with their honking horns. Instead, you might see a small flock of sheep meandering through the grass, their wool soft and bright against the green earth. Or perhaps there's a man in a flat cap, walking slowly down the lane, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tweed coat, taking his time to notice the little things, how the wind rustles the leaves, how the sun makes the grass shimmer with gold, how the clouds seem to change shape with every glance. The air is fresh here, cool and crisp in the mornings, and soft as velvet in the evenings. It carries the scent of the earth, the grass, and the occasional whiff of peat smoke from a cottage hearth. There's always a slight breeze, but it's never the sharp, biting kind. It's more like a whisper, soft and constant, like the gentle brushing of a hand against your cheek. It comes and goes, as if the earth itself is breathing, taking its time just like the world around it. In the evenings, the sky does something quite magical. as if it's waiting for the perfect moment to fall asleep. The sun dips slowly behind the hills, casting long, soft shadows over the land. And for a moment, just a moment, everything seems to glow a warm, golden light that softens the edges of the day. Then, as the sun sinks lower, the sky shifts to soft blues and purples, and the stars begin to peek out one by one, like little silver pinpricks in a velvet curtain. The world grows quieter, softer, as though the whole village is sighing, content with the day, and the sounds here. Oh, the sounds are as slow as the time itself. There's the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant bleating of sheep, the soft creak of a door opening and closing. Every sound is muted, like it's wrapped in a warm blanket, not demanding anything, but simply being there. You might hear the steady clink of knitting needles from an open window, or the slow, rhythmic thump of a farmer's boots as he makes his way home after a long day in the fields. The whole place hums with a soft, steady rhythm, like a lullaby that never quite ends. In this village, nothing is hurried. No one is in a rush. It's as though time has forgotten to hurry too. And in this little corner of the world, everything moves with a calmness that wraps around you like a familiar blanket, urging you to slow down, to breathe, to notice the little things. And you, my dear listener, are now a part of this peaceful rhythm. No need to hurry, no need to rush. Just breathe, just notice, just let yourself sink deeper into the stillness of it all. Now that we've settled into this slow-moving world, let me introduce you to someone who is, if possible, even slower than the land itself. You won't find them running any races or rushing to catch the bus. No, not this one. This character, as it happens, is quite content to move at the pace of a sleepy afternoon, and like the rest of the village, seems to have no particular desire to hurry. Her name is Brid, though in the village, most folks simply call her Brid. She's a woman of a certain age, with silver hair that falls in soft waves to her shoulders. It's the sort of hair that looks as though it's been kissed by the moonlight itself, soft and silvery, almost glowing when the sun hits it just right. Her eyes, though, they are the most comforting shade of blue, a deep, calming blue that reminds you of the sky just before dusk, when the world is perfectly still and the day is winding down into a peaceful evening. When Brid looks at you, it's as though she can see right into your soul, but in a way that makes you feel perfectly safe, like she's known you your whole life, even if you've just arrived. Brid wears simple clothes, nothing too fancy, just woolen sweaters and skirts, soft shoes that are quiet against the earth, and a scarf that she's always tying and retying like an old habit that's deeply comforting. Her clothes are always in shades of earthy tones, greens, browns, soft blues, and they match her personality, which is as calm and steady as the earth beneath her feet. If you ever had the pleasure of meeting her, you'd find that her movements are deliberate and slow, as if she's giving each step the time it needs to unfold. You see, Brid is the village's weaver, though. If you ask her, she'd simply tell you that she's been weaving for as long as I can remember, and maybe even a little longer than that. Her hands are nimble, though you wouldn't call them quick. They move with a quiet grace, taking their time to thread the wool through the loom, creating patterns that are as comforting as the softest blankets. The loom itself is old and antique, really passed down through generations. It sits in the corner of her cozy little cottage next to the fireplace, where the fire crackles gently and the smell of wood smoke mingles with the earthy scent of the wool she works with. It's a place where time slows down and where, if you were to sit and watch, you might lose track of the hours just by enjoying the rhythmic sounds of the weaving, the soft clack of the shuttle as it passes back and forth. But Brid isn't just a weaver of wool. She's a weaver of stories too. There's something about her that invites people to slow down and tell their tales. Maybe it's the way she listens, or maybe it's the way she pauses just for a moment, before responding, as though she's letting the words settle in her mind before they leave her lips. Whatever it is, Brit has a knack for making people feel like their stories matter, like they've got all the time in the world to tell them. And so it's no surprise that when someone in the village needs advice or even just a kind word, they turn to Brit. She's the one who listens patiently, never rushing anyone. She's the one who knows exactly when to offer a comforting word and when to simply sit in silence, letting the quiet speak for itself. People come from near and far, not just for the beautiful woolen blankets and shawls she weaves, but for the peace she offers in the gentle pauses of her life. Brit, you see, is not in a hurry to go anywhere. And perhaps that's her secret. She's found the quiet rhythm of life that doesn't need to be chased. Everything she touches, from her loom to her garden to the little wooden chairs she makes, by hand, carries the same steady calmness. There's no rush, no urgency, just the steady flow of a life well lived, the beauty of the small, quiet moments that make up each day. And so, as we settle into her world, we're reminded once again that there's no need to rush. There's time for everything, and Brit is a perfect example of that. She moves through her days as slowly and gently as the earth itself, weaving not just wool, but the very fabric of peace. Now we've arrived at the moment when we can wander back, just a little, into the quiet corridors of Brit's past. But my friend, don't expect any grand tales of faraway lands or adventurous exploits. No, Brit's backstory is one that is woven not from thrilling escapades, but from the quiet, almost imperceptible moments of a life well lived. It's a story of small things, details you might forget by tomorrow, but ones that make the most comfortable of memories when pieced together like the squares of a patchwork quilt. Brit was born, as it often goes, on a chilly autumn morning, in a small cottage much like the one she inhabits now. The fire in the hearth had just begun to crackle when she made her entrance into the world, and from that moment she seemed destined to move through life at a pace that matched the steady rhythm of the flames. Her mother, who was a skilled seamstress, always said that Brit was quiet as a mouse and not one to fuss. She didn't cry much, that one, she'd often say, shaking her head with a twinkle in her eye. She just looked around, curious, like she was taking her time to understand the world. Her father, a farmer of simple means, spent his days working the land, planting potatoes, mending fences, and tending to his small flock of sheep. He was the kind of man who spoke little, but his hands did all the talking, strong hands that could coax the earth into producing food, that could carve wood into tools, that could stroke the wool of a sheep with such care that you'd think the animals trusted him as much as they trusted the ground beneath their feet. Brit's childhood, much like her life now, was full of quiet, uneventful days. There were no grand family holidays, no yearly vacations to far-off places. No, most of Brit's time was spent in the company of her family and the land, and the rhythm of the seasons became as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. The days were long, stretching lazily between the planting and the harvesting, the tending to the fire and the mending of clothes. Time in Brit's world never raced ahead of her. It simply passed, each day blending softly into the next, as the earth does with its seasons. Her first real memory, the one that still makes her smile when she thinks of it, is the smell of wool. As a little girl, she'd sit beside her mother at the spinning wheel, watching as the wool was transformed, slowly and carefully, into thread. Her mother's hands were always so steady, moving with a grace that seemed to slow everything down. Brit would watch the wool spin, her eyes wide with wonder, as the fibers twisted and turned, transforming into something soft and useful. Her mother would laugh softly and say, "You'll learn in your own time, Brit, just like everything else." And Brit, though young, already knew that her own time would never be hurried. When she was old enough, she began to help her father in the fields, learning how to plant potatoes, how to check the sheep for wool that needed to be sheared, how to sit quietly and listen to the wind, for it would tell you when the rain was coming. And though she was young, there was always a calmness to Brid, a patience that seemed out of place for someone so small. While other children might have rushed through their chores, eager to get to play, Brid would move slowly, taking her time to notice the little things, the way the sun would catch the dew on the grass, how the wind whispered through the trees, how the sheep would gently nudge her as if to say, "All is well." As she grew, she took to weaving just as naturally as the seasons took to turning. The loom in her mother's cottage was an old one, its wood smooth from years of use and its rhythm steady. Brid would sit by it for hours, her fingers moving, with a careful precision, weaving threads into cloth just as her mother had taught her. And over the years, Brid wove not only wool, but the very fabric of her own quiet life, one that moved like the gentle tide of the sea, never rushing, never demanding, just flowing steadily, softly, and with great purpose. Her life has been full of small things, things that others might not notice, the way the light falls through the windows at midday, the sound of a fire crackling in the hearth, the quiet companionship of her animals, the steady rhythm of the loom's shuttle. But to Brid, these moments are everything. She knows them well, as familiar as her own skin. And though they might seem insignificant to an outside observer, to her, they are the essence of life itself. Now, as Brid weaves her way through the days, she doesn't think much on the past. It's enough for her to simply be where she is, in this slow, peaceful place, moving at a pace that feels just right. She doesn't need to remember every detail, because she knows that the important things, the truly meaningful moments, are the ones that stay with you, quietly tucked away like the wool in a basket, waiting to be spun into something beautiful in its own time. And so Brid's story is full of quiet truths, small moments that are always there, like the light that fades softly into dusk. She moves through her life with an ease and a calmness that reminds us all to slow down, to pay attention to the little things, and to remember that life doesn't need to be rushed. In the end, her story, like her life, is about the beauty of simplicity and how the world can unfold perfectly when you allow it to do so in its own time. Now, as we settle deeper into the rhythm of Brit's life, let me take you through a typical day, though I do warn you, it is not the sort of day that will leave you with a great sense of excitement or drama. No, Brid's day is more like a slow stroll along a quiet country lane, where the beauty is found in the smallest of details, and the pace is always set by the land, the wind, and the sun. Brid, you see, wakes with the first light of dawn, though it's never the sudden, jarring kind of awakening that you might experience when an alarm goes off, or when the world outside is pushing itself into the morning rush. No, Brid's waking is much softer, gentler, as though the day itself is stretching out slowly, just as she does. The light enters through the small paneled window of her bedroom, casting a soft glow on the wooden floors. For a moment, Brid lies still, not rushing to get up, just allowing the warmth of the bed to cling to her, like the last tender remnants of a dream dot. It's in these quiet moments, just before her feet touch the ground, that Brid takes a deep breath, filling her lungs with the fresh, cool morning air that drifts in from the open window. The air smells of dew and earth, of grass still glistening from the night's mist. It's a smell that Brid has come to associate with peace, with the gentle start of another unhurried day. She rises slowly, stretching her limbs with the grace of someone who has no need to hurry. Her feet make a soft sound against the wooden floors as she walks over to the window, pushing back the curtains to greet the new day. Outside, the landscape is quiet and still, just as it should be. The hills are bathed in soft light, and the fields are dotted with dew-covered grass. each blade shining like a tiny diamond. The sheep, still dozing in the distance, look like small, fluffy clouds in the early morning mist. Brid takes a moment to breathe it all in, the quiet beauty of the world outside her window. She might have stood there for a long while, but there is no hurry in her movements. Time doesn't demand anything from her. The clock on the wall ticks softly, but Brid pays it no mind. Her day will unfold as it always does, at its own pace, with no rush and no agenda. After a while, Brid begins her morning routine, each movement deliberate and calm. First, she makes her way to the small stone sink where she fills the kettle with water. It's a simple task, but one that is rich with meaning for her. The sound of the water splashing into the kettle is soothing, like the soft murmur of a stream. As the kettle fills, Brid lights the fire in the stove, her hands steady as she arranges the kindling, coaxing the flame into life with a few careful flicks of the match. The fire catches slowly, its warmth beginning to fill the room as the day unfolds gently around her. Once the kettle is on, Brid moves to the little basket of wool beside her loom. She runs her fingers through the soft, matted fibers, pulling out a handful and starting to card them with gentle precision. The process, though quiet and repetitive, brings a sense of calm over her. The wool slides through her fingers with a soft rustle, and the sound fills the room like a whispering lullaby. It is a rhythm she knows well, and the task itself becomes almost meditative, each pass of the carding. Jewel smoothing out the fibers, preparing them for the next step in the weaving process. Brid doesn't need to hurry through this. It's not a race to get the wool ready. She's content in the slowness of the process, finding peace in each careful stroke. The wool, once carded, will be spun into thread later in the day, but for now, she simply enjoys the quiet motion, the way it allows her to be present, fully immersed in the task at hand. The small things like this are the heartbeat of Brid's day. As the fire begins to crackle and the kettle hums softly, Brid moves to the small wooden table by the window where she keeps a simple breakfast. It's nothing grand, just a warm bowl of porridge made from oats she's grown herself. She stirs it slowly, adding a dollop of honey and a sprinkle of cinnamon, the steam rising in the quiet air. The smell of the porridge fills the room, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Brid doesn't rush through her breakfast. She eats slowly, savoring each bite, feeling the warmth of the food seep into her body, comforting her from the inside out. It's a ritual, one that has been repeated countless times over the years, but each time it feels as fresh and satisfying as the first. Once breakfast is done, Brid clears the table, wiping the surface with a damp cloth. It's a small task, but it's done with care, as though she's honoring the space she occupies. There's a simple beauty in this, in the quiet maintenance of everyday life. After all, it's these small moments, these small gestures that add up to a life well lived. There's no need for anything extravagant, no need for drama. Just the quiet hum of a day unfolding, one task at a time. Next, Brid moves outside to check on the garden. The soil, damp from the morning dew, feels cool beneath her bare feet as she steps onto the earth. She kneels by the rows of vegetables, gently tending to the plants, checking for any signs of growth, of life. The air is fresh here, filled with the earthy smell of the garden. She pulls a few weeds from the soil, her hands working slowly and steadily, moving with purpose but without haste. There's a sense of satisfaction in this work, and knowing that each plant, each seed, is nurtured with care. The rhythm of it is peaceful, like the steady beat of a drum, a song that's always there, waiting to be heard. And while Brid works, in the garden, the world continues to move at its own pace. The sheep, now awake, begin to graze in the field. The birds start their gentle songs, their calls echoing softly through the air. The wind, light and cool, rustles the leaves of the trees carrying with it the smell of pine and moss. The day unfolds slowly, with no urgency, no rush. It simply is. Brit works for a few hours in the garden, and then she moves back inside to her loom. The wool she's carded earlier is ready to be spun into thread, and she settles into her chair, pulling the spinning wheel close. The soft whir of the wheel fills the room as Brit works, the fibers twisting together under her steady hands. The rhythm of the spinning wheel is comforting, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Each turn of the wheel is deliberate, calm. There's no need to hurry. The day, like the thread, will come together in its own time. As the afternoon stretches on, Brit takes a moment to rest, perhaps sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching the world outside. The light begins to soften, casting long shadows across the fields. It's a time for reflection, a time to simply be. And there, in the stillness, Brit finds peace. The evening is a quiet affair. Brit prepares her dinner, often something simple, a stew of root vegetables, perhaps, or a loaf of bread fresh from the oven. The smell of food fills the cottage, mixing with the faint scent of the fire and the wool. There's no need to rush through dinner, no need to move quickly. She savors each bite, eating slowly, the food warm and comforting against the cool evening air. After dinner, the day winds down as it always does. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, and Brit may take a few moments to knit, to weave, or to simply sit in the quiet. She may listen to the wind outside or the soft rustling of the sheep in the field. It's the kind of quiet that settles deep into your bones, the kind that feels like home. And as the night deepens, Brit retires to bed, slipping beneath the warm covers with a sense of contentment, knowing that tomorrow will unfold in much the same way. There is no rush. There's no need for anything more than the quiet satisfaction of a life lived slowly, steadily, with purpose. And so Brit's day ends as it began, calmly, peacefully, and without hurry. The world continues to turn outside, but in her small cottage, there is only the steady rhythm of her life, unfolding gently, like the slow weaving of a beautiful tapestry. Now, you might think that in a life as unhurried as Brit's, with the soft ebb of each day slipping by like the gentle waves of a quiet sea, there wouldn't be much room for surprises. And indeed, for the most part, you'd be right. Life, in her little cottage moves with the kind of rhythm that doesn't invite drama or excitement. But even in a place where time flows at its own pace, where the days feel like the turning of a slow page in a well-loved book, the smallest of incidents can happen. And it's the way Brit handles these little moments, these quiet disruptions, that truly makes her life all the more peaceful. It begins, as most small incidents do, with the smallest thing, a slight misstep, an overlooked detail, a little moment that could easily be brushed aside in the rush of other, more pressing matters. But on this particular day, it happens just as Brit is returning to her loom, a basket of wool slung over one arm. The day has been soft, quiet, and uneventful up until now. The sun is casting long, soft shadows over the fields outside, and the gentle hum of the spinning wheel fills the cottage. All seems well, and there's no reason to think that anything might disrupt the stillness of the moment. But then it happens. You see, Brit's loom, as old as it is, has been moved just a little out of place. It's not something she would usually notice. After all, her hands move with a steady rhythm that knows exactly where each piece of the loom should be, like the way your feet know the path you walk every day. But today, something feels off. Brit reaches for the shuttle, but instead of the smooth, familiar glide of the thread being woven through the fibers, there's a slight resistance, a catch, almost imperceptible, but there. She frowns, just for a moment, because this is something she's grown so used to, the loom's soft click and whir, the way the threads slide through without hesitation. She stands up, walking around the loom slowly, her eyes scanning it from top to bottom, as though looking for a sign of something out of place. And there it is. In the smallest of details, the tiniest shift. The front leg of the loom, barely a fraction of an inch, has shifted ever so slightly. Not enough to cause real harm, not enough to make the loom unstable, but enough to cause that slight hitch in the rhythm. Brit's first instinct, as with all things, is not to rush into action. No, she doesn't panic. She doesn't scold the loom or herself. Instead, she kneels beside it, her hands gently touching the wood. The cool surface of the loom, worn smooth by years of use, feels like an old friend. She traces the line of its frame with her fingers, thinking for a moment. It's funny, isn't it? How the smallest change can ripple through our lives, just a little disruption in the pattern, and yet, if you allow yourself to notice it without hurry, without frustration, you might find that the incident is not as disruptive as it first seems. Brid knows this well. She knows that the loom is not angry with her, nor is it demanding her attention. It simply needs to be realigned, the tiniest of adjustments to set things right again. She stands slowly, her movements as deliberate as always, and walks over to the wooden chest beside the hearth. From it, she pulls a small, well-worn hammer, the handle of which is smooth and familiar in her grip. The tool itself looks like it. Has seen decades of gentle use, its head slightly worn, its edges smoothed by the years. Brit sets to work, gently tapping the small wooden peg that holds the loom's leg in place, guiding it back to its proper position. It's all done with. Such care, with such quiet attention to detail, that you might not even notice the process at all, were you to look away for a moment. The hammer taps softly, almost rhythmically, like the soft beat of a heart, bringing the loom back into alignment. There is no rush, no impatience in her movements. In fact, there's a strange beauty to the stillness of the moment. It's a reminder that even the smallest things, when given the time and attention they deserve, can be fixed, realigned, and brought back into balance. As Brit finishes, she steps back and surveys her work. The loom is as steady as it was before, its frame settled comfortably into place. The resistance is gone. The thread will glide through once more, just as it always has. It's a small thing, really. A shift in the loom's position, a slight bump, a tiny incident in a day full of stillness. But to Brid, it feels significant in its own way. For it is the small, often overlooked moments like this that make up the true fabric of her day. She picks up the shuttle and begins to weave again, the soft hum of the wheel filling the room, the steady rhythm returning as if nothing had ever interrupted it. The wool slides smoothly, the shuttle dances between the threads, and the loom clicks along in its slow, deliberate pace. And there, in that simple, quiet moment, Brid knows something important, that life, much like the loom, is full of tiny adjustments, moments that might seem like interruptions, but which, in the end, help us stay on track, keep us grounded. Now, you may wonder what's so significant about such a small incident. What's the point of a moment as slight as this? But the truth is, it's in these tiny disruptions, these small adjustments, that life often reveals its quiet wisdom. We might feel a little resistance here or there, a snag in the thread, a misstep, a small misalignment, but if we don't rush, if we don't panic, we can find our way back. We can realign ourselves with care and patience and continue weaving our own lives. It's funny, isn't it? How even the smallest interruptions can remind us to pause, to breathe, to pay attention to what's really happening around us. Brid could have easily ignored the misalignment, could have rushed through her day without giving it a second thought, but instead, she paused. She took a breath. She noticed. And in doing so, she found the peace in the tiny, quiet adjustments that are always there waiting for us to notice. As the evening begins to settle in, the last rays of the sun casting their golden glow over the land. Brid continues to weave, her movements steady once more. The loom hums, the wool slides through. Her fingers, and the small incident, now nothing more than a memory, fades into the background of another peaceful day. And so, in the end, the incident becomes just another stitch in the tapestry of her life, small, quiet, and unimportant in the grand scheme of things, but also necessary, a part of the rhythm that keeps everything moving forward, slow and steady, like the steady turning of a page in a story that never quite ends. In a small village like the one Brid calls home, there's something comforting about the old ways. The ways that have been passed down through generations, woven into the very fabric of life, like the threads of wool she so carefully spins on her loom. These old ways, these traditions don't rush. They aren't concerned with modern clocks or fast-paced schedules. No, these ways have been honed by time itself, shaped by the land and the seasons, moving like the slow flow of a river, steady, constant, and full of quiet wisdom. For Brid, these traditions are not just something to be remembered. They are the very backbone of her life, the threads that tie her to the earth, to her family, and to the village. In her hands, the old ways are alive, not as dusty relics of a bygone time, but as living practices that continue to shape the present, even in a world that often seems in a hurry to leave them behind. Take, for instance, the art of weaving. For generations, Brid's family has passed down the craft, each woman in the line learning the skill from her mother, her grandmother, and beyond. The loom, now standing proudly in the corner of Brid's cottage, is a relic of the past, but it is also a living testament to the power of tradition. It's not just a tool for making cloth, but a connection to the women who came before her, who sat at the same loom, weaving patterns and creating textiles with hands much like her own. The rhythm of the shuttle, the way the thread glides through the fibers, it's a dance that has been practiced for centuries. Brit doesn't think about the history of weaving every time she sits down at her loom. No, that would be too much to think about in the middle of her slow, thoughtful process. But the knowledge, the inherited wisdom of those who came before her, is there, embedded in every movement of her hands. It's in the way she knows, without thinking, when the thread is tight enough, or when it needs just a little more tension. It's in the way she feels the rhythm of the loom, how it hums like a familiar song, a melody that's been passed down through generations. But weaving is just one of the old ways that Brid holds dear. Her village, tucked away in its quiet valley, is full of traditions that are as much a part of the land as the trees and the fields. There are the old festivals, for instance, the harvest celebrations that mark the change of seasons, when the villagers gather together to share the bounty of the land. These festivals are not loud or boisterous. There are no fireworks or grand parades. No, these celebrations are simple and quiet, full of the joy of being together, of sharing in the work that has been done throughout the year. There's the taste of freshly baked bread, the scent of roasting vegetables, the sound of people laughing as they tell stories by the fire. The harvest festival is always held at the end of the summer, when the days are still long but the nights begin to cool, when the earth has given its bounty and the village prepares for the coming winter. It's a time of gratitude, of reflection. The villagers gather in the center of the village square, bringing with them the fruits of their labor baskets of root vegetables, jars of honey, and loaves of bread, all made with care and love. Older villagers pass down stories, the legends of the land, while the younger ones listen, their eyes wide with wonder. It's a tradition that has been carried on for generations, a quiet reminder of the deep connection between the people and the earth, a reminder that the seasons move in their own time, and so should we. And then there is the tradition of storytelling. Oh, the stories. If you've ever spent time in a place where the days move slowly, you'll know that storytelling is a way of life. It's not done for an audience or for fame, but simply because stories are the glue that holds the community together. In the evenings, after the work of the day is done, the villagers gather by the fire, the flames casting long shadows on the ground. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, each person content in the stillness. And then, when the mood is right, someone begins to speak. The stories are simple. They are not tales of great battles or fantastical adventures, though there are some legends of old gods and heroes that get told from time to time. No, the best stories are the small ones, the ones about the little moments that make up life. The story of a rabbit who outwitted a fox, or the tale of a shepherd who learned the value of patience while waiting for his sheep to return home. These stories are told slowly, with a gentle cadence, as if they are meant to be savored rather than rushed through. Each one carries a lesson, but the lessons are never preached. Instead, they are woven into the fabric of the tale, like a delicate pattern that only reveals itself when you take the time to look closely. Brit is often one of the ones who shares the stories. She is known for her soft voice, the way she tells a tale with such quiet affection that even the youngest child listens intently, as if they are hearing something ancient and true. She doesn't need to embellish the stories. Her words are enough, and in her telling, the stories take on a magic of their own, filling the air with a sense of warmth and comfort. There's nothing fancy about the way she tells them, no dramatic pauses or grand gestures. It's just the steady flow of her voice, the simple joy of sharing a memory with those around her. And then, of course, there are the more practical traditions, the ones that, while they may not seem as romantic, are just as important. The way that the villagers plant their crops by the phases of the moon, for example. Or the old technique of preserving vegetables in jars, using salt and vinegar to keep them fresh for the winter. These are the small, everyday traditions that make life in the village flow smoothly, allowing people to live in harmony with the land and with one another. One of Brit's favorites, though, is the tradition of the yearly spring clean. It's a time when the entire village comes together to clean, repair, and refresh their homes and gardens. It's not just about tidying up, it's about giving thanks for the space you live in, honoring the house that has sheltered you through the seasons. Brit always takes great care in her spring clean, wiping down the shelves, rearranging the furniture, and making sure everything is in its place. It's a way of saying goodbye to the old, worn-out things from the past year and making room for the new. The tradition is done with care and attention, never in a rush, and when it's complete, the whole village gathers for a small feast to celebrate the renewal. These old ways, these traditions, are more than just customs. They are the heartbeat of life in Brit's village. They are a way of staying connected to the land, to the past, and to one another, in a world that often seems intent on moving forward, on rushing ahead. Brit and the others know that there is value in slowing down, in honoring the rhythms of the earth and the lessons that come with them. Brit doesn't mean to think much about these traditions. They are woven into the fabric of her life, just as the wool is woven into the fabric of the cloth she makes. They are part of her, as natural and as comforting as the steady passing of the seasons. And as she continues to weave, as she continues to live each slow, deliberate day, she knows that these old ways will endure. They will be passed down to the next generation as they have been passed down to her, for there is a quiet wisdom in the traditions of the land. And as long as people continue to listen, to pay attention, they will remain a steady part of life, a reminder that there is beauty in the slow, the deliberate, and the eternal. If you were to sit beside Brit on any given evening as the day's work wound down and the night began to take hold, you would notice something remarkable. The silence, yes, but also the sounds that fill that silence, a quiet symphony that is so subtle you might almost miss it. In the village where Brid lives, silence isn't something that presses in or makes you uncomfortable. No, it's the kind of silence that invites you to listen, to notice. It's the sound of the earth breathing, the gentle hum of life moving at its own steady pace, and it's the music of a world that is never truly still, but merely waiting for you to pay attention. Take, for instance, the sound of the wind. It's a sound you might not hear if you're rushing, if you're caught up in the busyness of your own thoughts. But when you stop, when you let go of all the noise, you begin to hear the wind in a different way. It's never harsh here, never a loud, howling gale that demands your attention. No, it's the kind of wind that caresses the land, a soft whisper, that moves through the trees like a secret. At times, it's barely a rustle, just the faintest stirring of leaves, but at others, it sighs as it moves across the fields, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth, of fresh grass and dew-soaked soil. It's the kind of wind that doesn't rush. It simply moves in its own time, soft and steady, like the passing of days. And then there are the birds. Oh, the birds. They are the true singers of the village, their songs filling the air as the sun begins to dip behind the hills. The blackbirds, the robins, and the sparrows, they all sing, but not in any hurry. Their songs are long and sweet, filled with the kind of melodies that seem to stretch out, just like the day itself. If you sit long enough, you might even notice how the birds have their own rhythm, how the chorus builds slowly with one bird calling out first, followed by another, then another, until the air is filled with their voices, each note blending into the next. Brid listens to the birds in her own way. Sometimes, as she works at her loom, she lets their songs wash over her, the rhythm of their calls matching the steady rhythm of her own movements. It's not that she pays close attention to any one bird, but rather to the whole symphony. The way the songs come and go, the way they rise and fall, is like a quiet reminder that life is always in motion, even when it seems still. It's in these small sounds, these subtle rhythms, that Brid finds comfort. It's a world that isn't rushing, but isn't stagnant either. It's moving, slowly and steadily, like a river winding its way through the land. And if you listen even closer, you'll begin to hear the softer sounds. The ones that are hidden beneath the obvious ones, like the murmur of the earth itself. The faint creak of the floorboards beneath Brid's feet as she moves through her cottage. The crackling of the fire, a steady companion in the evenings, filling the room with warmth and the gentle scent of burning wood. The ticking of the old clock on the mantel, each tick a reminder that time is passing but never rushing. It's a sound that's so familiar to Brid. It's almost like a heartbeat, keeping time with her own, marking the slow, steady progress of the day. And then there are the sounds of the animals, the ones that follow Brid throughout her day, like old friends who never ask for much but are always there, keeping her company in their own quiet way. The sheep in the field, their soft bleating, blending into the background like a lullaby. The low, contented hum of the cows in the barn, the sound of their steady breathing as they rest, waiting for the day to pass. The occasional cluck of a hen, wandering around the yard, picking at the ground in search of food. These sounds are so quiet, so constant, that they become a part of the landscape itself, part of the rhythm of life that moves through the village, unhurried and steady. It's easy to overlook these sounds if you're not paying attention, easy to think that they're insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But for Brid, they are the very fabric of her day. She knows them well, these small sounds, because they are the pulse of her life. They remind her that even in the quietest of moments, life is still moving, still unfolding, still waiting for her to notice. And when she does, when she takes the time to listen, she feels more connected to the land, to the rhythms of the earth, and to the steady, comforting pace of her own life. There's a particular sound that Brit enjoys above all others, though. It's the sound of the rain. When the rain comes, it doesn't arrive with a rush, as if it's in a hurry to get somewhere. No, the rain falls gently, almost as though it's been waiting for the right moment to begin. At first, it's just a soft patter on the roof, a light tapping that is so gentle you might almost mistake it for the wind. But as the rain grows heavier, the sound becomes more pronounced, filling the air with a steady rhythm that seems to match the beating of your heart. Brid loves the rain. There's something about it that brings a deep sense of calm to her soul. When the rain falls, she knows that the earth is being nourished, that the plants are drinking in the water, and that the world is simply taking a moment to pause, to breathe, and to renew itself. It's a sound that signals a shift in the air, a change in the mood, and Brid welcomes it, knowing that, like all things, it will pass in its own time. The rain doesn't rush to leave. It stays as long as it's needed, and then, when the earth has had its fill, it drifts away, leaving behind a cool, refreshing stillness. In these quiet moments, when the rain falls softly against the windows, and the fire crackles on the hearth, Brid feels a deep sense of peace. It's the kind of peace that comes from being in harmony with the world around you, from listening to the sounds that fill the stillness, and from knowing that in this moment there's nowhere else you need to be. The world moves at its own pace, just as it always has, and Brid moves with it, in tune with the rhythms of the land, the air, and the animals that share this space with her. And so, as the day fades into night and the sounds of the village soften into a quiet hum, Brid settles into her evening routine, content in the stillness that surrounds her. The wind whispers through the trees outside, the fire crackles in the hearth, and the sheep sigh softly in the field, their quiet bleating fading into the background. These sounds, so gentle, so constant, are the heartbeat of Brid's world. They are the music of her life, the quiet symphony that fills the silence and reminds her that, no matter how still the world may seem, there is always something moving, something to listen to, if you're willing to stop and pay attention. And so, with each passing evening, as the sounds of stillness fill the air, Brid's world continues to unfold, slowly, steadily, and with the soft, comforting rhythm of life itself. The world doesn't rush. It moves in its own time, in the quiet flow of the wind, the song of the birds, and the steady beat of the earth beneath her feet. In this world, Brid finds peace, knowing that the sounds of stillness are always there, waiting to be heard. It's a funny thing, isn't it? How in a world that moves as slowly as Brid's, where each day unfolds with a quiet and deliberate rhythm, a tiny, almost imperceptible confusion can feel like the most urgent of matters. It's not that Brid minds confusion. Oh no. She's lived through enough little moments of misunderstanding in her time to know that these things happen. But still, there's something about that initial sense of something's not quite right that can make you pause, even in the most peaceful of surroundings. On this particular day, Brid is moving about her home with the quiet ease that's so familiar to her. The day has been like any other slow, calm, with the distant sound of birdsong drifting through the open window. She's been weaving at her loom, as she often does in the afternoons, letting the rhythmic motion of the shuttle soothe her mind. The fire crackles in the hearth, filling the room with warmth, and outside, the sheep graze lazily in the field. All is as it should be. But then, as she stands to stretch her legs and walk over to the small table where she keeps her tea kettle, something catches her eye. She's not sure what it is at first. It's almost as if the quiet of the room has shifted, just slightly, and there's a small detail that feels off. Brid pauses, her hand still resting on the wooden arm of her chair. For a moment, she wonders if she's imagined it, but no, there it is again. The sensation of something being out of place. She looks around her cozy cottage, her gaze lingering on the familiar objects she's so used to: her loom, the small basket of wool, the wooden chest by the fire. There's the kettle sitting quietly on the stove. And then, just to the side, there's her scarf, the one she always drapes over the back of the chair when she's not wearing it. It's missing. Now, this is not a matter of great importance. Brit has plenty of scarves, and she's certain it will turn up somewhere. But for some reason, this small detail, the missing scarf, seems to have unsettled the calm that has settled over her home. She stands there for a moment, wondering where it could have gone. She's sure she left it there, neatly draped over the chair, just as she always does. She walks over to the chair, checking to see if perhaps it's simply fallen to the floor. But no, it's not there either. Perhaps it's somewhere else in the room. Perhaps she moved it when she was tidying up earlier. She starts to search, first the windowsill, then the small side table, then the corner of the room where her knitting basket sits. Still nothing. A small wrinkle of concern creases her brow. It's a very minor thing, this missing scarf, but it's one of those little mysteries that, once noticed, refuses to be forgotten until it is resolved. She steps back and looks around the room again, as if the very act of observing will somehow bring the scarf into view. Her cottage, as small as it is, isn't cluttered. Everything has its place, everything in its proper order. And yet here, she is searching for something that she knows should be right where she left it. Now, where did I put you? She mutters softly to herself, her voice barely more than a whisper. It's strange, really, how such a small thing can hold so much of your attention. The scarf isn't important, not in any great sense. But somehow, its absence has pulled at the fabric of her quiet day, like a single thread coming loose from a well-woven tapestry. She begins to laugh softly, shaking her head. Silly thing, Brid, she says with a smile, as if to remind herself that this is a small confusion, a fleeting moment that need not be taken too seriously. After all, life here is built on the belief that no task, no problem is ever too large or too urgent to be solved with a little patience, a little time, and perhaps a bit of quiet contemplation. Brid walks over to the window, where the soft light of the late afternoon streams in, casting long shadows across the floor. She stands there for a moment, taking in the view of the land-distant hills, the gentle curve of the path that leads to the village, the small patches of wildflowers blooming in the grass. The air smells of earth and pine, and everything feels as it should. But still, that small wrinkle of confusion nags at her. She walks back to the chair and picks up her knitting basket, thinking perhaps the scarf was tucked away among the yarn. But no, it's not there either. She opens the small cupboard beside the fire, where she keeps her shawls and woolen garments, but it's not there either. Now, at this point, most people might feel a sense of frustration building, especially over such a trivial matter. It's easy, after all, to let small things like this unravel the calm of an otherwise peaceful day. But not Brid. She pauses again, taking a deep breath, letting the stillness of the room fill her. There's no hurry. There's no need to feel rushed. The scarf, wherever it is, will turn up in its own time. With this thought in mind, Brid moves slowly toward the back of the room, near the hearth, where the firelight dances gently. And there, tucked just behind the old armchair, she spots a small, familiar bundle of wool. It's the scarf, of course neatly folded, as though it had simply slipped off the back of the chair while she was weaving, only to fall unnoticed to the floor. She laughs softly to herself, bending down to pick it up. "Found you," she murmurs, with a smile. There it is, in its rightful place once again, and the tiny confusion that had caused her a brief moment of pause is resolved. The world doesn't stop, of course. The birds continue to sing outside. The wind rustles gently through the trees, and the fire crackles steadily in the hearth. But in this small, quiet corner of the world, everything feels just right again. The scarf is back, and the rhythm of her day returns to its usual gentle pace. And so, with the scarf in hand, Brid drapes it once more over the back of the chair, just as she always does. She smiles to herself, feeling that quiet sense of satisfaction that comes from resolving even the smallest of mysteries. It's a reminder that sometimes when things don't quite align, when there's a little confusion, all it takes is a bit of patience, a bit of time, and the willingness to pause. Often, the answers to life's little questions are right there, waiting to be found just when you stop to look. And perhaps in that moment, there's a lesson for all of us that the small confusions, the little disruptions, are not problems to be solved in haste. They're simply part of the rhythm of life, as steady and inevitable as the passing of the seasons. Just as the day flows into night, just as the sheep graze in the field without worry, so too will the small mysteries of life be resolved gently, quietly, and without rush. Brit doesn't think much more about the missing scarf, for the day continues on just as it should. She returns to her loom, the rhythm of the shuttle taking over once more. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, the sheep continue to graze in the field, and the air is as still and peaceful as it has always been. The small confusion, now long forgotten, becomes nothing more than another thread woven into the tapestry of her day, a reminder that in this quiet, unhurried world, all things, even the smallest of incidents, are resolved in their own time. As the evening draws in and the last golden rays of sunlight fade behind the hills, there's a certain magic that stirs in the village where Brid lives. The air, now cool from the setting sun, seems to hold a special kind of stillness, one that invites stories. Stories shared in the warmth of homes, in the flickering light of hearth fires, and under the quiet gaze of the stars that are just beginning to appear. The village, though small, is rich with characters, each with their own tale to tell, each with a piece of wisdom to share. And when the work of the day is done, when the evening is calm and the wind has softened, it is these stories that bring the village together. Brid, in her gentle way, is often one of the storytellers. But tonight, as she settles into her chair by the fire, knitting softly, she knows that the evening stories will come not from her lips, but from the neighbors who pass by, who stop in for a cup of tea or a moment's rest. It's the kind of evening when everyone's pace slows just a little more, when the outside world feels far away, and the stories that are shared feel like the most natural thing in the world. It begins, as many evenings do, with the soft knock on the door. Brit looks up, her knitting needles still in hand as the door creaks open. Standing in the doorway is Sean, the village's postman, a man who has been delivering letters and packages to the village for as long as anyone can remember. His back is slightly bent from years of walking the same paths, but his eyes are bright and his smile is warm. "Well now, Brit," Sean says, stepping into the warmth of the cottage. "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I was just down the road, delivering a letter to Maeve, and I thought I might as well come in for a bit of tea." "Of course, Sean, come in," Brit says with a welcoming smile, setting down her knitting and rising to her feet. "It's good to see you. I'm just finishing up here, but I'll put the kettle on." Sean removes his hat and hangs his coat on the hook by the door, settling into the chair beside the fire with a sigh of contentment. "Ah, that's better, I swear. These bones of mine aren't as spry as they used to be," he says, winking at Brid as she moves around the kitchen. But there's nothing like the warmth of a good fire to ease the cold from the day's work. As Brid fills the kettle and sets it on the stove, Sean leans back in his chair, stretching out his legs and making himself comfortable. There's a peaceful ease to the way he carries himself, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing the rhythms of the village so well. After all, he's been delivering letters and parcels here for years, and in that time, he's come to know nearly everyone in the village, their habits, their stories, their joys, and their sorrows. So tell me, Sean, Britt asks, setting a cup of tea in front of him. Any interesting stories today? Sean chuckles, taking the cup and savoring the warmth of it. Oh, well, you know how it is, he begins, his voice taking on the slow, deliberate tone of someone who knows that a good story is never rushed. The usual sorts of things, nothing too dramatic, but I did run into Tom O'Leary down by the crossroads this morning, and that man always has a tale to tell. Tom O'Leary, you say? Britt raises an eyebrow, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Now there's a man who's full of stories. What was it this time? Well, Sean continues, leaning in slightly as though to share a secret. It was about his old dog, Buster. Now, Buster, bless him, is a stubborn thing. Tom's had him for years, and they're like two peas in a pod. Always together, always causing a bit of trouble here and there. Well, Tom tells me that just this morning, Buster decided he wasn't going to stay in the yard anymore. No, sir, he was going to take himself off for a walk, whether Tom liked it or not. Britt laughs softly, her eyes twinkling. That dog is something else, always finding his own way. Sean grins, clearly enjoying the story. You're right about that. So Tom goes out looking for him, and there he is, down by the river, sitting in the middle of the road like he owns the place. Tom calls out to him, but Buster just looks at him with that stubborn stare of his. And do you know what he does? What does he do? Britt asks, her curiosity piqued. He trots over to a bush, digs around for a bit, and pulls out a whole bag of flour. Not just any flour, mind you. This was the bag Tom had been meaning to take to Mrs. Callahan's house for her scones. And there it was, Buster, sitting there with his prize, like he's been on a grand adventure, bringing back treasure. Britt chuckles at the thought of the old dog, imagining his proud, wide-eyed expression as he sat there with his prize. I suppose Tom couldn't be too upset with him, could he? Oh, not at all, Sean says, shaking his head with a grin. Tom's been laughing about it all day. He says, well, at least the old mutt got some exercise, even if it was just in the wrong direction. He takes another sip of his tea, his face softening in fondness. But that's Tom, isn't it? Always able to laugh at the small things, even when they seem a bit frustrating. I'd say that's one of his greatest gifts, Britt agrees, her voice thoughtful. Finding humor in the little things, the things that others might let get under their skin. Sean nods. That's Tom. He's always had a way of making the best of things, no matter what comes his way. And Buster, well, he's been with him through thick and thin. He's a good dog, even if he's a bit mischievous. The two of them sit in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their tea and listening to the crackle of the fire. The soft murmur of the wind outside, the rustle of leaves, and the distant call of an owl are the only sounds in the room. After a few moments, Britt leans back in her chair, looking thoughtful. It's funny, isn't it? She says softly. How the little stories, the ones that might seem insignificant to someone else, are the ones that matter most. They're the ones that stick with you. Sean smiles gently. Britt. The small stories are often the ones that hold the most meaning. They remind us of the little joys, the small moments that make up the bigger picture. Britt nods, her gaze drifting toward the window. That's true. And they keep the village alive, don't they? Every story we share, every laugh, every memory, it all weaves together like the threads of a blanket, keeping us warm through the years. Sean chuckles, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Well said, Britt, well said. As the evening continues to deepen, more visitors come by. drawn by the warmth of Brit's cottage and the quiet companionship that seems to live in the air. Old Mrs. Walsh, the village's unofficial historian, comes in with a basket of freshly baked scones. Her hands, though gnarled with age, still hold the memory of all the years she spent kneading dough, making bread, and baking for the village. She sets the basket on the table, and soon everyone is gathered around, sipping tea, nibbling on scones, and swapping stories. There's talk of the old days, when the village was smaller, when the roads were dirt, and when the air smelled of smoke and the sound of children's laughter was ever present in the fields. Mrs. Walsh remembers the winter of '48, when the snow was so thick that the village was cut off for weeks. Sean recalls how, during the harvest season, everyone would come together to help one another gather the crops, and how the entire village would celebrate at the end with a feast of bread, cheese, and jam. As each story is told, Brid listens, with a quiet smile, content to be in the presence of such rich memories. She knows that it is these stories, these small, simple tales, that hold the village together. They are the threads that connect the past with the present, the old ways with the new. And as she sits there, surrounded by the voices of her neighbors, Brid feels the deep comfort of tradition, the quiet joy of shared history, and the simple truth that stories, no matter how small, are what make life truly meaningful. And so, the evening continues with more stories, more laughter, and more memories shared. The fire burns low, the kettle is refilled, and the sound of conversation fills the room. A warm and steady hum that carries with it the timeless rhythm of a village that knows the value of slowing down, of pausing to listen, and of holding each other's stories close. As the evening settles deeper into the quiet of the village, there's something comforting in the familiar rhythms of the kitchen. In Brid's cottage, the kitchen is more than just a place where food is prepared. It's a sanctuary, a place where time seems to slow down, where the world outside can be forgotten for a little while, and where warmth is shared in every corner. The smell of freshly baked bread, the gentle hum of the kettle as it boils, and the soft sound of a spoon stirring tea, these are the things that mark the passage of the day in Brid's home. This evening, as the fire crackles softly in the hearth, Brid is preparing a meal nothing grand or extravagant, but something simple and comforting, the kind of food that feels like a warm embrace after a long day. She stands at the stove, her hands moving with the steady rhythm of someone who has done this for years, someone who knows exactly what needs to be done, but who takes the time to enjoy the process nonetheless. The kitchen, small and snug, is filled with the soft glow of the fire, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. The wooden table, worn smooth by years of use, is already set with a simple cloth, the edges slightly frayed from the many meals. Shared there, the air smells of onions sizzling in a pan, mingling with the earthy scent of potatoes that are boiling on the stove. A pot of thick, hearty stew sits at the back of the stove, its contents slowly simmering, the rich aroma rising. To fill the room, Brid hums softly to herself as she stirs the pot, the rhythmic motion of her hands grounding her in the present moment. She doesn't rush, doesn't hurry the cooking along, for there's no need. The stew will be ready when it's ready. The vegetables, freshly picked from her garden, are tender and full of flavor, and the meat is slowly breaking down, its rich juices infusing the broth with warmth and depth. As the stew simmers, Brid adds a pinch of salt and a dash of pepper, the familiar spices that have seasoned her meals for years. They are simple additions, but they make all the difference, creating the warmth and comfort that will be shared at the table. The kettle on the stove begins to whistle softly, the sound like a gentle reminder that tea time is near. Brid moves to the counter where the tea caddy sits beside a small jar of honey. She opens the caddy and, with a careful hand, selects. the perfect blend of rich, robust black tea, fragrant and inviting. She places the leaves in the pot, then pours the hot water over them, watching as the dark liquid swirls and deepens. The tea will need to steep for a few minutes, long enough to release all of its flavor, but not so long that it becomes bitter. As the tea brews, Brid checks on the stew again, her wooden spoon stirring the thick broth. She can hear the gentle bubbling sound of the pot, a reassuring noise that lets her know everything is coming together just as it should. The steam rises from the pot, mingling with the scents of the kitchen, filling the air with a warm, savory aroma. The kitchen is alive with small moments, the sizzle of onions in the pan, the gentle whistle of the kettle, the soft clink of the spoon against the pot. It is a quiet symphony of comfort, one that is deeply familiar to Brid. She has prepared countless meals in this kitchen, and yet each one still feels like a small ritual, a moment to slow down, to take the time to nourish both body and soul. When the tea is steeped to perfection, Brid pours it into a small teapot. Its floral design faded with time, but still as cherished as ever. She adds a splash of milk, the liquid swirling into the dark tea, turning it the perfect shade of brown. There's something about the simplicity of a good cup of tea so warm, so soothing, that always makes Brid feel grounded, connected to the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. She carries the teapot and two mismatched cups over to the table, setting them down beside a small dish of honey, which she knows will sweeten the tea just enough for her taste. There's no need for fancy china or delicate cups in this cottage. The simple comfort of these mismatched items, each with its own story, its own history, is what makes them perfect. They are the quiet markers of a life lived slowly, thoughtfully, and with an appreciation for the little things. As she waits for the stew to finish cooking, Brid takes a seat at the table, cradling her cup of tea in both hands. She takes a sip, letting the warmth of the tea spread through her, calming her senses, soothing the edges of the day. The tea is strong, just the way she likes it, with the faintest hint of sweetness from the honey. There's something about the act of drinking tea that invites reflection, that slows down the mind and allows the body to rest in the quiet of the moment. The soft light of the fire flickers in the corner of the room, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind has picked up, rustling the leaves in the trees, but in the kitchen, there is only peace. Brid takes another sip of her tea, then stands and stirs the stew once more. The flavors have melded together perfectly, the broth rich and aromatic, the vegetables tender and flavorful. It's the kind of stew that makes you feel warm from the inside out, the kind of food that fills you up and comforts you, no matter what the day has brought. With a contented sigh, Brid ladles the stew into two bowls, the steam rising in soft tendrils as she sets them on the table. The hearty meal is accompanied by freshly baked bread, golden and warm from the oven. She slices it thick, the crust crackling slightly as the knife cuts through. The bread, warm and inviting, is the perfect accompaniment to the stew, and Brid smiles to herself as she arranges everything neatly on the table. There is something deeply satisfying about sharing a meal, about the quiet act of feeding oneself, of nourishing the body after a long day. She sits back down at the table, the meal before her, and takes a moment to appreciate the simple joy of it all. The food is not extravagant, not fancy, but it is made with care, with patience, and with the kind of love that only comes from years of practice, years of tending to the land, and years of knowing what it takes to create something truly nourishing. And so Brid eats, savoring each bite of the rich, hearty stew, the warmth of the bread, the comfort of the tea. The meal is simple, but it is enough. It is a reminder of the beauty of slow, thoughtful living, the kind of living that is grounded in the small moments, the quiet rituals that make up each day. As the last bit of stew is eaten and the teacup emptied, Brid leans back in her chair. Content in full. The fire continues to crackle softly, and outside, the world seems to slow down even further. The wind's whisper becoming softer, the rustling of the trees quieter. The evening is winding down, and Brit feels the weight of the day lifting off her shoulders, leaving only peace in its place. There is no need for anything more. The world can wait. For now, there is only the comfort of a warm meal, a full belly, and the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. In the stillness of her cottage, surrounded by the smells of the kitchen and the warmth of the fire, Brid knows that this simple moment is enough. In a world that often rushes, that often demands more than we can give, there is great peace in the small, quiet moments like this one, when all you need is a good meal, a hot cup of tea, and the time to truly savor it. And so Brid sits back, content in the warmth of her home, knowing that the quiet, slow pace of her life is the very thing that nourishes her, just as surely as the food she eats and the tea she drinks. The evening air, which had been soft and warm all day, now carries a change. It's subtle at first, just a slight shift in the atmosphere that one might not notice if they weren't paying close attention. But Brid, as familiar as she is with the land and the rhythms of the world around her, feels it instantly. It's as though the air has taken a breath deep and slow, and in that breath, she can feel the coolness, the stillness that comes just before a weather shift. It's not the kind of change that demands your attention, not like the bluster of a storm or the crackling tension of a sudden downpour. No, it's the kind of shift that is almost imperceptible, like the turning of a page, soft and gentle, without fanfare. The warmth of the day, which has clung to the land through the afternoon, begins to fade, replaced by a crispness that feels almost like a sigh from the earth itself. Brid stands by the window, her hands resting on the ledge as she gazes out at the fields. The sky, which had been a soft blue for most of the afternoon, now carries the faintest hints of gray, like the promise of rain, but not quite. The sun, still hanging low on the horizon, casts long shadows across the land, and in that light, the world looks like it is wrapped in a soft, muted glow, as though everything is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She takes a deep breath, her senses alive to the subtle changes around her. The air feels fresher now, more invigorating, and yet there's a softness to it, as though the wind itself is taking a pause, holding back for just a moment before it begins to move again. The trees, which had been swaying gently with the breeze earlier, now stand still, their leaves barely rustling. The grass in the field seems to hold its own breath, too, no longer shifting in the wind, but simply standing, still and quiet. Brit doesn't hurry. She never does, not even when the weather shifts in such a quiet and unassuming way. She simply observes, taking in the feel of the air, the way the light is changing, the way the world seems to pause for just a moment. This is the kind of stillness she treasures, the kind that invites you to slow down, to pay attention, to notice. The little things. The kettle, which she had left on the stove a few moments ago, begins to whine softly, its high-pitched hum a reminder that her tea is almost ready. She turns away from the window and moves toward the stove, her movements steady and unhurried. As she pours the hot water over the tea leaves, the steam rises in soft curls, filling the room with a gentle warmth. It's the kind of warmth that contrasts with the coolness in the air, creating a balance that feels just right. She sits at the table, her cup of tea cradled in her hands, and takes a sip, letting the warmth of the tea spread through her, grounding her in the present moment. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, adding to the sense of comfort in the room. But outside, the world is changing just slightly, and Brid knows that with each passing minute, the coolness in the air will deepen. The shift that began so subtly will become more pronounced. The evening will bring with it the quiet promise of rain, the earth's way of refreshing itself after the heat of the day. But even as the air shifts and the world outside begins to change, there's no rush, no urgency. Brit simply waits. The tea is warm, the fire is steady, and the world is moving, even if it's moving so slowly that it feels like nothing at all is happening. This, she knows, is the beauty of it all, the slow dance of the seasons, the gentle ebb and flow of the world around her, and the peace that comes from knowing that things will unfold in their own time. As the evening deepens, the sky grows darker, the gray clouds stretching across the horizon. The first hint of rain begins to trickle down, a soft patter on the roof, the kind of rain that doesn't rush, doesn't demand your attention, but simply falls, slow and steady, like the quiet rhythm of the earth itself. Brid listens to the sound, the soft drumming of the rain against the roof and the window, and she smiles to herself. There's something comforting about this kind of rain, this slow, gentle shift in the weather. It's not a storm, it's not dramatic. It's just the earth's way of washing itself clean, of refreshing the land and the air. Brid takes another sip of her tea, savoring the warmth of it as the rain continues to fall. The fire crackles, the rain falls, and the world outside is transformed into a quiet, peaceful place. The air is cooler now, fresh and clean, and the ground beneath her feet feels just a little more alive, a little more at peace. And then, just as she's about to return to her chair by the fire, something catches her eye, a flash of movement outside the window. She leans forward, curious, and sees a pair of deer standing at the edge of the field, their sleek, dark bodies silhouetted against the misty background of the rain. They're still watching the world around them, as though they too are pausing, taking in the change in the air. The soft rain falls on their coats, but they don't seem to mind. They stand, calm and serene, as the world moves around them. Brid watches for a moment, appreciating the quiet beauty of the scene. There's something magical in the way the animals move through the world, how they too are in tune with the rhythms of nature, how they seem to understand that the shift in the air is a part of something much larger, something much older than any of them. She settles back into her chair, her cup of tea in her hands, and the sound of the rain becomes the soundtrack of the evening. It's not loud, not overwhelming, but rather it's the kind of rain that you feel in your bones, the kind that invites you to rest, to listen, to be present. Outside, the rain falls steadily, the mist swirling around the fields, and the temperature continues to drop. But inside, in Brid's cottage, there's warmth from the fire, warmth from the tea, warmth from the stillness. The world outside is changing, yes, but here in this small, peaceful place, everything feels just as it should be. And that, Brid knows, is the way of the world. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be rushed. The weather shifts in its own time. The seasons turn with their quiet grace, and the world moves, always moving, but never in a hurry. She takes another sip of her tea and watches the rain fall outside, content in the stillness, content in the knowledge that all things, big and small, will unfold in their own time with no need to force them along. The rain will stop when it is ready, the night will deepen, and tomorrow will come, just as it always does, with the same quiet rhythm. And as Brid sits by the fire, her tea in hand, and the rain falling softly outside, she feels a deep sense of peace settle over her, knowing that the world and all its quiet shifts will always find its way just as it always has. There is a particular kind of magic in the objects we keep close to us, in the things that hold memories, not just in our minds, but in their very presence. In the worn edges of their surfaces, the soft fading of their colors, and the way they seem to carry the weight of years without showing it. For Brid, many of the things in her cottage are not just objects, they are tangible pieces of her life, stitched into the fabric of her memories. Each one tied to a moment, a feeling, or a person that has shaped the quiet rhythm of her days. Take, for instance, the blanket that rests across her chair. It is a simple thing, woven from wool in the softest shades of green and brown, the colors of the earth, of the hills that surround the village. The blanket, though well worn, is still strong, its fibers soft with age, and the warmth of years spent draped over her shoulders or folded at the foot of her bed. It's a piece of her mother's handiwork, woven with great care on the same loom Brid now uses. Her mother had spent countless hours creating it, each stitch a small prayer for warmth, for comfort, for the quiet love that defined her life. When Brid was a girl, her mother would sit by the hearth, the loom gently creaking as the shuttle passed through, and tell her stories of the land, of the way the seasons worked their magic, and how the land could teach patience and resilience. The blanket, then, was more than just warmth. It was the embodiment of those stories, a reminder that warmth, both physical and emotional, could be found in the simplest of things. Brid pulls the blanket over her lap now, the familiar weight of it bringing her a sense of calm, a sense of connection to the past, to the hands that wove it with such care. She feels, as she does every time she touches it, that quiet love that her mother had poured into each thread. It's as if the blanket has absorbed all those moments, those stories, and now, every time Brid drapes it over her shoulders, she can feel the echo of those days, of the quiet evenings spent by the fire, with the loom clacking softly in the background. It's not just the blanket that holds memory. There's the old wooden chest at the foot of her bed, its surface scratched and faded, but still strong. The chest belonged to her grandmother, passed down through generations, and it holds within it some of Brid's most treasured belongings. Inside, she keeps letters from old friends, faded photographs of people who have long since passed, and small trinkets, a button from her father's coat, a seashell from the beach near the village, a small dried flower pressed between two pieces of paper. These are the things that don't seem important to anyone else, perhaps, but to Brid they are the keepers of stories. Reminders of people and places that have shaped her life in ways that words alone cannot describe. Every now and then, when the weather is cool and the fire is bright, Brid will open the chest and look through the items inside, running her fingers over the edges of the photographs, tracing the faint pencil markings on the backs of letters. Each object carries with it a small part of her history, a connection to the past, a whisper of voices long gone. The chest, with its worn wood and the scent of old paper, holds these memories like a time capsule, preserving them until Brid is ready to revisit them. One of her favorite items in the chest is a small, hand-carved wooden horse, its body worn, smooth by time. It was given to her by her father when she was just a child. He had carved it himself with the same steady hands that tended to the farm and worked the land. Brid had played with the horse for hours when she was younger, imagining grand adventures and long journeys across fields and rivers. Even now, when she holds it in her hand, she can still feel the warmth of her father's hands in the smooth wood, as though the love and care he put into the carving still lives within it. It's not a toy anymore, but a cherished memory, a link to the man who taught her the value of patience and hard work. The smell of the wooden horse brings Brid back to a time when the world seemed larger, when the days were full of adventure and discovery, and the evenings were spent listening to her father's stories of the land and the animals. Though the horse no longer races through imaginary fields in her hands, it still carries with it the essence of those childhood days, and Brid feels that quiet warmth whenever she looks at it, holding it in her palm as if it were a treasure. There's also the small clay mug, chipped at the rim and worn from years of use. It's one of a set that Brid's mother had bought in the village market many years ago, and though the others have long since been replaced, this one has stayed with Brid, its imperfections only adding to its charm. She uses it every evening, filling it with tea as she settles down for the night. The mug is more than just a vessel for tea, it's a connection to the days when her mother would pour tea for the two of them, sitting side by side at the table, talking of everything and nothing. The quiet moments shared over tea, the warmth of the steam rising from the cup, the comforting routine of the day's end all of these are wrapped up in the small, worn mug. It is a piece of the past that Brid carries with her, always close, by as constant as the rhythm of the seasons. Each of these objects, whether it's the blanket, the chest, the carved horse, or the mug, holds memories, yes, but they also hold something more. They hold the quiet, steady persistence of time itself. Time which never rushes, never hurries, but moves in its own way, in its own rhythm, like the slow turning of a page in a book. Each memory woven into these things is a thread in the larger tapestry of Brid's life, a tapestry that stretches back through the generations, through the stories of those who have come before her. Brid is keenly aware of the fact that these objects, these memories, are the things that ground her, that connect her to the land, to her family, and to the history that shapes her. There is something deeply comforting in knowing that the memories are always there, woven into the fabric of the things she holds dear. They are not fleeting. They are not lost in the rush of life. They remain as steady as the land itself, ready to be touched, to be remembered, whenever the time is right. As Brid sits by the fire, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders and the soft flicker of the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls, she reflects on the simple but profound truth that these physical objects carry more than just memories. They carry the essence of the people who shaped her, the moments that made her who she is. In the quiet of the evening, with the kettle whistling softly in the background and the rain tapping gently on the roof, Brid knows that she is, in a sense, surrounded by love, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the kind that is woven into the quiet fabric of everyday life, into the very things she holds close. The evening stretches on, and Brid lets herself be comforted by the presence of these things, the memories that are held within them. The world outside may change, the seasons may turn, but these small, tangible pieces of her life remain constant. A steady reminder that, though time moves on, the things we hold dear are never truly lost. They live on in the objects we keep, in the memories we weave into the fabric of our days. And in that, there is peace as the day begins to wane and the fire in Brid's hearth crackles softly. A visitor arrives at her door, one whose presence is as familiar as the earth beneath her feet and as steady as the passing of time itself. It's not an unexpected visit, for the village has its own rhythm. And when the evenings grow long and the chill begins to settle in, it's often the same few faces who wander through Brid's door, drawn by the warmth of her fire and the comfort of shared silence. But this visitor is different, and if you've spent enough time in the village, you'll know to expect her. It's Aunt Nora. Aunt Nora is the oldest of Brid's relatives, a woman whose life seems as woven into the fabric of the village as the very stone walls of Brid's cottage. Her hair is silver, fine as ash, and always tucked neatly beneath a soft woolen cap. Her back is bent slightly with age, but her hands are steady, and her eyes, though clouded with years, still gleam with the sharpness that comes from having lived so fully. Aunt Nora's footsteps are soft and sure, and when she enters Brid's home, it's like the room takes a breath deep and slow, welcoming her with open arms. Brid hears the soft knock on the door and rises, her woolen blanket still draped across her shoulders, and opens it to find Aunt Nora standing on the threshold. The older woman looks up at her with a soft, knowing smile, her lips curling slightly at the corners, as if she's always in on a secret that the rest of the world is just beginning to understand. "Well, now, Brid," Aunt Nora says, her voice low and rich with years. "I was just passing by and thought I might come in for a bit of warmth." That fire of yours looks mighty inviting, and I reckon it's time for a little rest. Bread smiles and steps aside, ushering her aunt in. Of course, Aunt Nora. You're always welcome here. Aunt Nora, though small and bent, carries herself with a quiet dignity, as if she knows the world will wait for her and she has no need to hurry. Her shoes make a soft, shuffling sound against the wooden floor as she crosses the threshold, and Britt can't help but notice how the years have etched their gentle presence on her aunt's face. There is wisdom in her wrinkles and the deep lines around her eyes, and there is a sort of peace that comes from the way Aunt Nora moves through the world, unrushed, content, and fully aware of the passage of time, but never afraid of it. I've been sitting with the sheep all day, Aunt Nora says, settling herself into the chair by the fire. They're growing fat on the fall grass, so I thought I'd sit with them a while longer before the evening's chill sets in. But, she continues, her voice taking on a thoughtful tone, I think I might be getting a bit too old for all that standing about. The legs get weary when you've seen as many years as I have. The fire's a better place to be now. Britt chuckles softly, nodding in understanding. She knows that her aunt has always been one for hard work, one who spent her life outside, tending to the land and the animals. There's a certain beauty in Aunt Nora's acceptance of age, an acceptance that Britt has only come to fully understand in recent years. There's no resistance in her aunt, no longing for the vitality of youth. She has embraced her years with grace, and now, in her later years, she has come to appreciate the quieter moments, the stillness that comes with time spent by the fire, the patience that comes with knowing that there is no need to rush through life. As Aunt Nora settles in, Britt begins to prepare a fresh cup of tea, the kettle still humming softly on the stove. She knows that Aunt Nora prefers it strong, just a little bit of honey to sweeten it, and she prepares the tea with the same care that she would for anyone who entered her home. The rhythm of the process is comforting, like an old dance that has been perfected over the years. The tea is ready, and Britt carries the steaming cup to her aunt, who takes it with a quiet thank you, the lines of her face softening with the warmth of the liquid. Ah, that's better, Aunt Nora says, her eyes closing briefly as she takes a sip. Nothing quite like a cup of tea to settle the bones, is there? Britt smiles, sitting down across from her aunt, her own tea, now in hand. The fire crackles between them, and the room is filled with the quiet hum of contentment. The world outside may be growing colder, the days shorter, but here, in this room, there is warmth, a warmth that is not just from the fire, but from the presence of Aunt Nora, from the shared space of this evening, from the slow, peaceful rhythm of the day winding down. Aunt Nora leans back in her chair, the comfort of the tea taking effect. Her eyelids flutter close for a moment, as though the weight of the world has finally found its balance in the stillness of the room. For a moment, Britt is content to simply watch her, appreciating the quiet wisdom that emanates from her aunt, the soft, steady rise and fall of her chest as she breathes in time with the fire's crackling. I was thinking today, Aunt Nora says, her voice suddenly breaking the silence, about how fast things seem to move these days. Not in this village, mind you, but everywhere else. I remember a time when a day felt like a week, when you could take your time with things and there was no rush, no need to worry about where the time was going. But now, it feels like the world is running ahead of itself, like it's lost its way. Britt listens quietly, the warmth of her tea comforting her as she settles into the rhythm of her aunt's words. She has heard this before, of course. Aunt Nora often speaks of the changing times, of how the world used to be, of the pace of life that felt more deliberate, more connected to the earth and the seasons. But there is always a gentle wistfulness in her voice, as though she longs for a time that she knows cannot return, yet still feels deeply connected to it. It's a funny thing, though. Aunt Nora continues, her voice growing softer. People think they need to be busy all the time. But what's the point of all that busyness if you can't take a moment to listen to the wind, or watch the sheep grazing, or sit by the fire and let the world move at its own pace? What's the point of rushing through life when the real beauty is in the stillness, in the quiet moments that you can't see if you're always looking ahead? Brit nods, her heart full as she listens. There's a certain peace in Aunt Nora's words, a peace that comes from years of experience, from a life lived slowly and steadily without the need for urgency. Brit has always admired her aunt's ability to be present, to live in the moment, without worrying about what comes next. In a world that often seems obsessed with moving faster, Aunt Nora is a reminder that there is wisdom in slowing down, in savoring each moment, and in finding contentment in the simple things. Aunt Nora's eyes flutter open again, and she looks at Brid with a smile that is both knowing and gentle. You know, my dear, I think I've spent enough years rushing about. I think I've earned the right to rest a bit, to enjoy the quiet. And you know what? I think you have too. Brid smiles softly, her heart swelling with warmth. She has spent so many years listening to her aunt, learning from her, finding comfort in her steady presence. And now, in this quiet moment by the fire, she realizes just how much Aunt Nora's wisdom has shaped her life. The years may have passed and the world may have changed, but the wisdom of living slowly, of being content in the moment, is something that will always remain. As the fire flickers low and the evening grows quieter still, Aunt Nora settles deeper into her chair, her eyelids heavy with sleep. She looks at Brid one last time, her eyes filled with a soft, knowing affection. "Don't forget, Brid," she says, her voice barely a whisper. "The most important thing is to take your time. Let the world wait. There's always time for the things that truly matter." And with that, Aunt Nora closes her eyes, a contented sigh escaping her lips as she drifts into a peaceful nap. Brid watches her for a moment, her heart full of gratitude, and then returns to her own quiet thoughts, content in the stillness of the room, in the presence of her aunt, and in the knowledge that time, like everything else in Brid's world, moves at its own pace. The fire crackles softly, the room fills with warmth, and the evening continues on, slow and steady, as it always does. The fire continues to burn brightly in Brid's hearth, sending flickers of amber light across the room, but outside, the evening grows darker and quieter. The rain has stopped, leaving a soft mist that clings to the earth and the trees, making everything look as if it were gently wrapped in a soft blanket of fog. The village, though it feels vast in its own way, is small enough that the sounds of everyday life are never too far away. It's as if the whole world exists in a delicate balance of movement and stillness, of change and timelessness. But inside Brid's cottage, all is quiet. The only sounds are the steady crackle of the fire, the faint chirping of crickets outside, and the occasional whisper of the wind in the trees. For a moment, Brid simply sits in silence, her cup of tea resting in her hands, the warmth of it mingling with the warmth of the fire at her back. There's no hurry, no sense of urgency to fill the space with words. It's one of those rare moments in time where all of life's rushes and demands seem to fade into the background, leaving only the present to be fully lived. It's in these quiet moments that Brid feels most connected to the earth beneath her feet, to the steady rhythm of time that flows like a river, neither rushing nor slowing, but moving gently, persistently forward. She takes a sip of her tea, savoring the warmth of it as the gentle flavor spreads through her. The steam rises in soft swirls, and for a moment, Brid lets her gaze drift to the flames. They dance and flicker, casting long shadows on the walls, and it occurs to her, as it often does on nights like this, how much life mirrors the fire in the hearth. The flames rise and fall, shifting with the air, never the same from one moment to the next, but always constant in their motion. Time, too, feels like that, a constant, gentle shifting, a quiet, rhythmic pulse that guides us, whether we acknowledge it or not. The past flickers behind us, as ephemeral as the fire's light, and the future dances ahead, unknown and unwritten, like the shadows on the walls. But the present, the only moment that truly exists, is here now, and it is in these moments that life in its purest form is experienced. Brid leans back in her chair, her gaze soft and unfocused, letting her thoughts wander as they often do when the evening stretches into quiet reflection. There's something about the rhythm of the fire, the quiet hum of the world outside, that makes her think of time, of how it seems to pass both quickly and slowly, how the days sometimes blur into one another, and yet when she looks back, she can see the distinct marks of time, each season, each memory, each small, unnoticed moment that has come together to form the life she knows now. She thinks of the land, of the fields that stretch out beyond her cottage, of the hills that rise and fall, like the soft rise and fall of her own chest as she breathes. The land has always been a steady companion to Brid. It has shaped her in ways both large and small, just as it has shaped everyone who has ever walked its soil. There's a deep connection between her and the earth, a sense of belonging that's as old as time itself. The rhythms of the seasons, the planting and the harvesting, the quiet dormancy of winter, the vibrant renewal of spring have always been her constant companions. The land doesn't rush, doesn't force anything. It simply moves in its own. Time, season after season, year after year. And in that, there is a quiet wisdom, a reminder that life doesn't need to hurry. It will unfold as it's meant to in its own time. It's in this moment of quiet that Brid remembers her father. She recalls the way he would stand in the field, his gaze soft and steady as he surveyed the land. He didn't speak much, her father. His hands, rough from years of work, would move with a quiet purpose, planting seeds, mending fences, or tending to the animals, always with the same steady, deliberate pace. Brid had never once seen him rush, and as a child, she had wondered why that was, why he never seemed to hurry. But as she grew older, she began to understand. It wasn't that he didn't care about the work. It was that he understood the rhythm of the land, the way it moved in its own time. He knew that no matter how fast he worked, the land would still move at its own pace. And so he worked with it, not against it, allowing the rhythm of the earth to guide him. There was wisdom in that, Brid realized, a kind of quiet understanding that only comes with time. As Brid's mind drifts back to the present, she feels the weight of the years settle around her. She is not a young woman anymore, though she doesn't feel the need to measure her age by the number of years lived. Instead, she measures it by the moments she has experienced, by the quiet joys and the simple satisfactions of life. She has lived through many seasons, seen the land shift and change, and she has learned to appreciate the quiet beauty in each passing moment. The rush of youth has long since passed, and now, in the quiet of these evenings, Brid finds herself savoring the slow rhythm of life, the way the days move from one to the next, with no need for hurry. She thinks of the way the world used to be, when things were simpler, when time moved at a pace that was easier to follow. It's not that the world has changed for the worse, but there is something comforting about the simplicity of the past. Something that she misses, even as she embraces the life she has now. There is a certain peace in the slow unfolding of time, in the gentle passage of seasons, in the quiet moments of reflection that come with age. And yet there is also a beauty in the new, in the way the world continues to evolve, to move forward, to grow and change. In these quiet moments, Brid finds herself thinking not only of the past, but of the future as well. It's a future that, like the fire's flickering light, is uncertain, shifting, and full of possibilities. There are moments when she wonders what lies ahead, what the future holds for her, for the village, for the world. But she has learned over the years that the future is not something to fear or rush toward. It is simply another chapter in the story of life, one that will unfold when the time is right, when the moment is ready. And for now, Brit is content to live in the present, to savor the stillness of the evening, to appreciate the quiet of the world around her. The fire begins to die down, the embers glowing softly in the hearth, and Brit knows that it's time to wind down for the night. But before she does, she takes one last look around the room, appreciating the stillness, the quiet peace that fills every corner of her cottage. The memories of the past are all around her, woven into the very fabric of the space. The land, the seasons, the people she has known, they are all present, in the small things, in the memories, in the objects that fill her home. They are a part of her, a part of the rhythm of her life, just as the earth is a part of the land, and the land is a part of her. With a contented sigh, Brid rises from her chair, her bones creaking just a little with the effort, but her heart light. She knows that tomorrow will come just as it always does. The seasons will turn, the days will pass, and the rhythm of life will continue, slow and steady, like the steady turning of a page in a book. There's no need to rush, no need to hurry. Life will unfold in its own time, and Brid will move with it at her own pace, in her own way. As she blows out the candles and settles into bed, the quiet peace of the evening settles over her like a soft blanket. The world outside may be full of noise and hurry, but inside her home, inside her heart, there is only the steady, unhurried rhythm of life unfolding one moment at a time. And in that, there is contentment, there is peace. There is a deep, abiding understanding that life, in all its quiet beauty, is enough. The quiet of the evening lingers in Brid's cottage, where the fire still flickers softly in the hearth, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Outside, the world seems to pause, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold, for something to change. But within the walls of the cottage, there is only stillness, a stillness that feels as natural as the passing of time itself, as comforting as the familiar warmth of the hearth. Brid leans back in her chair, her eyes following the soft glow of the fire, and she takes a deep, slow breath, inhaling the scent of burning wood and the lingering traces of her evening tea. The world outside may continue to turn, but in this moment, in this space, there is no rush, no need to hurry. There is only the present, and Brid allows herself to be fully immersed in it, to feel the peace that comes with being exactly where she is. It's easy, in times like these, to get lost in the thoughts of the past or the future. The mind can wander, tracing the patterns of memories or imagining what is yet to come, and before you know it, the present moment slips away unnoticed. But Brid has learned over the years to return to the present with intention, to center herself in the here and now, to allow herself to fully appreciate the world around her as it is, in its simplicity and its stillness. Tonight she focuses on the small details of the room, details she has long since grown accustomed to, but which, on this quiet evening, seem to carry an extra layer of meaning. The soft rustle of the fire as the wood shifts and settles in the hearth, the gentle hum of the wind outside moving through the trees in the distance, the warmth of the woolen blanket still draped across her shoulders, wrapping her in the softness of the evening, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, slow and steady, like the pulse of the earth itself. She takes a moment to close her eyes, allowing the stillness to envelop her, to sink deep into her bones. She can feel the weight of the day, lifting from her shoulders, the remnants of any lingering worries or thoughts evaporating like mist. There's no need to think of what has been or what is to come. The present moment is all that matters now, and in this moment, Brid is exactly where she needs to be. For so much of her life, Brid has understood the importance of the small, quiet moments, those moments of simple peace that can so easily slip by unnoticed in the rush of the world. She has spent her days working the land, caring for the animals, and weaving her own life into the fabric of the village. But it is in moments like this, in the stillness of the evening, when she is reminded of the beauty in slowing down and simply being. The fire crackles softly, and Brid opens her eyes again, drawn back to the present by the gentle sound. She watches the flames dance in the hearth, their movement fluid and graceful, as though they too are taking their time. There is a certain magic in the way fire moves, in the way it flickers and shifts, never quite the same from one moment to the next, but always present, always steady. It is a reminder, Brid thinks, that even in life's constant flow there is beauty to be found in the ebb and the pause, in the stillness between moments. Outside, the stars have begun to appear, dotting the sky with their faint silver light. The moon, full and bright, hangs low in the sky, casting a soft glow over the village. The world beyond the cottage is quiet, and for a moment Brid allows herself to take in the full beauty of the scene. The land, the sky, the stars, everything feels vast and yet intimately connected, as though she is a part of something much larger, something timeless. She feels a gentle smile tug at her lips as she watches the moon rise higher in the sky. The peace of the moment settles over her like a blanket, warm and comforting. There's no need to look ahead, no need to rush forward. The future, with all its uncertainty, will come when it is ready. And when it does, Brid will meet it with the same patience and calm that she has always embraced. But for now, she allows herself to simply be, to feel the weight of her body in the chair, to listen to the soft rhythm of her breath, to appreciate the warmth of the fire, and to recognize the beauty of the world as it is in this moment. The world is not perfect, not in the way that some might expect, but it is full of quiet moments like this one, moments of stillness, of peace, of reflection. And in these moments, Brid finds her place, her sense of belonging, in the rhythm of life that continues, steady and unhurried, just as it always has. There is no rush here. No need to force anything, no need to hurry to the next thing. Brid knows that the world will continue to turn, that the days will unfold, one after the other, like pages turning in a book. She doesn't need to know the ending of the story, doesn't need to chase after the next chapter. The present is enough, just as it is. The quiet of the room, the warmth of the fire, the peace in her heart, these are the things that matter now. And as Brid sits there in the soft embrace of the present moment, she knows that this right here is all she truly needs. The wind outside picks up again, and Brid hears it rustling through the trees. It is a familiar sound, one that she has heard countless times before, but tonight it feels different. There is a sense of calm in the wind's movement, a sense that it too is moving slowly, taking its time, allowing the world to breathe. It's as if the wind is in no hurry to go anywhere, as though it understands the beauty and stillness. In pausing to feel the world around it, Brid closes her eyes once more, allowing the sound of the wind to wash over her, to deepen her sense of calm. She lets go of any lingering thoughts, any distractions, and simply focuses on the present. The present moment is where she finds peace, where she finds herself. The past has already been lived, and the future has yet to unfold. But right now, in this quiet space, there is nothing else of it but here and now. The fire continues to burn low, and Brid feels a deep sense of gratitude for this moment. It is a moment of quiet reflection, of peaceful solitude, of connection with the land, the world, and herself. There's no need to search for meaning, no need to look for answers. The meaning is here in the quiet of the room, in the stillness of the evening, in the simple beauty of the world as it is. And so Brit allows herself to sink deeper into the present, to embrace the peace that comes with being fully immersed in the moment. The world can wait. The future will come in its own time, just as the seasons change, just as the earth moves through its cycles. And for now, Brit is content to sit, to listen, to be. She knows that in this moment, she has everything she needs. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, the wind rustles the trees outside, and Brit is here, present, peaceful, and at home in the quiet rhythm of her life. As the night deepens and the fire in Brit's hearth settles into a slow, steady glow, the world outside quiets even further, the mist hanging low in the fields, and the coolness of the evening creeping into the corners of her cottage. The day's work is done. The chores are complete. Now, in the hush of the evening, Brit begins the slow, familiar rituals that bring her closer to sleep, a kind of comfort in the soft, unhurried routine that has guided her through countless nights. There is a beauty in these rituals, in the small acts of care that mark the end of each day. They are not rushed, not hurried. Each step is deliberate, each movement infused with a sense of peace and purpose. For Brit, these moments are a sanctuary, a quiet refuge before she lets herself be carried into the stillness of sleep. The first thing Brit does is to check the fire, her hands moving gently over the embers to ensure that the hearth will stay warm through the night. She has always loved the fire, the way it flickers and crackles, the warmth it provides, the comfort of its soft light. Tonight, the flames are already low, and she gives the logs a small nudge, watching as the embers glow brighter for a moment before settling back into a calm rhythm. She doesn't need the fire to be roaring, not at this hour, but she likes knowing it's there, quietly burning, holding the night at bay. Once the fire is settled, Brit stands and stretches, feeling the small creaks and sighs of her body as the muscles unwind after a day of work. There's something gentle about this part of the evening, the way she allows herself to breathe a little deeper, to stretch a little longer, to acknowledge the comfort of the quiet, the softness of the night. Her body is tired, but not in a way that feels rushed or strained. It is the tiredness of a day well spent, of a life lived in the slow, steady rhythm of the land. She's in no hurry to get to bed, no urgency in the air. Instead, she takes her time, moving in a way that allows her body to sink further into the comfort of the evening. Brit moves over to the window, looking out at the stillness of the village. The lights in the cottages are dimming, and she knows. The rest of the village is settling in, just as she is. There's a kind of quiet solidarity in these moments, a shared understanding that the day has come to an end, and it's time for rest. The world outside is at peace, and Brit is part of it, tucked safely within the walls of her cottage, surrounded by the quiet of the land. With a contented sigh, Brit turns from the window and walks over to her small kitchen. The kettle, still warm from earlier, sits on the stove, waiting. She fills it with fresh water and places it back on the fire, watching the small bubbles begin to form at the bottom. It doesn't take long for the kettle to start whistling softly, the sound gentle and familiar in the stillness of the room. While the water heats, Brit sets about preparing her bed. There's a sense of ritual in this, to a quiet care in the way she pulls the blankets back and smooths the linen. She arranges the pillows, fluffs them just so, and pulls the blankets up, ensuring they are even and warm. She likes the way the cool sheets feel against her skin before the warmth of the blankets settles over her, enveloping her in softness. It's a small luxury, but one that always brings her a deep sense of comfort. The bed is simple, just a wooden frame with a sturdy mattress and thick blankets, but it is hers. And there is nothing more comforting than the thought of slipping into its warmth at the end of the day. By now, the kettle is ready, the steam Rising in soft curls from the spout, Brid pours the hot water over the tea leaves, letting them steep for a moment, releasing their deep, earthy fragrance. She doesn't rush this part either. There's no need. The tea will be ready when it's ready. The anticipation is part of the comfort, the small wait that allows the flavors to deepen, that gives her a moment to breathe before she settles into bed. With the tea in hand, Brid moves back to the hearth and settles into her favorite chair, the one by the fire. It's worn in just the right places, molded to her shape, and it's become the perfect spot to enjoy her evening tea. She wraps the woolen blanket around her shoulders again, the familiar weight of it comforting, and lets the warmth of the fire and the tea slowly pull her into a space of calm. The room is filled with the soft sound of the fire, the gentle hum of the wind outside, and the occasional crack of the logs shifting in the hearth. She takes her first sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through her, easing away the last remnants of the day. The tea is strong, but not overpowering, just the right balance of warmth and comfort. It's not the taste that she craves so much as the ritual of it, the act of slowing down, of giving herself this small moment of peace before the world slips into darkness. The tea is part of the rhythm of her evening, a moment of mindfulness that marks the transition from the busyness of the day to the stillness of night. Brid closes her eyes for a moment, savoring the warmth of the tea, the peace of the room. She lets the day settle inside her, all the small tasks, the quiet moments, the simple joys, folding into the space of the evening. There's no need to remember every detail, to keep track of everything that happened. The quiet of the night has a way of letting things go, of allowing the mind to release the weight of the day's concerns. As she finishes her tea, Brid rises and sets the empty cup on the table beside her. The fire is beginning to die down, and she knows it will need to be stoked once more before she sleeps to ensure the warmth lasts through the night. She adds a few more logs, the flames jumping back to life as the new wood catches, the warmth spreading through the room once again. The room feels cozy, safe, and secure, and Brid takes a moment to appreciate the quiet of it all. She turns toward the window, watching as the village outside becomes cloaked in the soft light of evening. The stars have begun to twinkle faintly. In the sky, their light soft and distant. The world, at this moment, feels far away, yet so close, everything in perfect balance. She can hear the faint sounds of the village settling down, the rustle of leaves in the trees, the far-off call of an owl. It's as though the world is wrapping itself in a blanket, much like Brid is, settling into the peaceful rhythm of the night. Brid moves toward her bed, the ritual of sleep now almost complete. She undresses slowly, each movement as gentle and deliberate as the rest of the evening. She pulls back the covers and slips into the cool sheets, feeling the softness of the linen against her skin. The warmth of the blankets follows soon after, cocooning her in the quiet comfort of her bed. For a moment, she simply lies there, her body sinking into the mattress, the weight of the day lifting completely. The room is now dark except for the soft, golden glow of the dying fire. The stillness of the evening has settled fully around her, and Brid feels her breath slow, the tension in her body fading away. She listens to the gentle rhythm of the night, the crackling fire, the rustle of the wind, the soft sounds of the world outside, and she feels herself being carried into this stillness. There is no rush now. No need to look ahead. No need to worry about what comes next. The world will turn, the seasons will shift, and tomorrow will come in its own time, just as it always does. For now, there is only the present, the comfort of the blankets, the peace of the night, the quiet rhythm of her breath. It is enough. And so, Brid closes her eyes, the last flickers of the fire casting a soft light in the room, and lets herself drift off to sleep, carried by the peace of the night held in the quiet rituals of the evening. The world may continue to spin outside, but here, in this small, quiet space, all is well. All is as it should be. The world outside Brit's cottage has slipped entirely into darkness now, and the gentle glow of the fire is the only light that remains. The mist that had crept across the land earlier has thickened into a soft, enveloping fog, slowly rising from the ground and curling around the edges of the trees, like a soft blanket laid over the hills. The village is quiet, its usual sounds, the distant bleating of sheep, the creaking of wooden doors eclipsed by the stillness of the fog. It feels as though time itself has slowed, like the earth has drawn a deep breath and is holding it. Waiting, inside, Brit sits quietly, her hands resting in her lap, the familiar warmth of the fire still comforting her. She's not in a hurry to sleep. Not yet. The night is still young, and in these quiet hours, when the world outside is draped in fog and mystery, she finds herself not wanting to rush toward the end of the day. Instead, she savors these moments, the stillness, the cool air, the soft glow of the fire, and allows herself to simply be. The air feels heavy, thick with moisture, and the faint scent of damp earth seeps into the room through the cracks in the walls. It is a comforting smell, one that tells Brid that the land is resting, just as she is. The fog has quieted everything, softened all the edges of the world, and for a moment, it feels as though there is no tomorrow, no need to worry about what comes next. There is only now the present, the space in which Brid exists, perfectly content in the quiet rhythm of life. As she sits there, letting the stillness of the evening seep into her, she feels a deep connection to the land outside, to the village, to the hills that rise and fall like slow, sleepy waves. The fog, she thinks, is like a veil over everything, a soft, gentle covering that protects and shields, making everything feel a little softer, a little more intimate. She has seen fog settle over the hills many times, and each time it brings with it a sense of peace, of knowing that the world will continue to turn, but for now, it can rest. The fire crackles again, and Brid stands to add another log, watching. As the flames leap higher, casting their warm, flickering light across the room, she moves slowly, deliberately, as if in tune with the rhythms of the world around her. Her movements are a reflection of the stillness outside, calm, unhurried, as though time itself has slowed to meet her pace. She pulls the log into the hearth, the smell of the burning wood filling the air, and watches as the flames catch, slowly and steadily. The crackling of the fire is the only sound now, joining the whispering of the wind outside, which seems to have picked up in the mist. Brid pauses for a moment, her hand resting on the back of her chair, and looks out the window. The fog has spread further, now reaching the edge of the village, creeping into the corners of the fields, wrapping the trees in a soft, ethereal shroud. The stars above are hidden, swallowed by the thickening mist, and only the faint glow of the moon can be seen like a shadow behind the clouds. It is a quiet, almost mystical night, one that feels timeless, as though the world is holding its breath, waiting for something, though Brid can't say what. The stillness in the air is almost tangible now. Even the wind has softened its usual rustling, reduced to a faint murmur, as if the land itself has entered a deep, peaceful slumber. It's the kind of night where everything feels perfectly aligned, where the rhythm of the earth and the pulse of the stars are in perfect harmony, and where time doesn't seem to matter. Brid sinks back into her chair, drawing the blanket around her shoulders again. The coolness of the night has seeped into the room, but it is a comfortable chill, one that makes the fire feel even warmer, even more inviting. She sips her tea, slowly this time, savoring the warmth as it spreads through her, settling into her bones like a quiet promise of rest. For a few moments, Brid allows herself to simply be. No thoughts, no worries. The quiet of the night holds her gently, as if inviting her to let go of the day and surrender to the stillness of the moment. The fire crackles again, the sound soft punctuation in the silence, but Brid doesn't need to fill the space with words. She is content to let the stillness speak for itself. And then, in the distance, she hears it, the soft, rhythmic sound of footsteps on the path. It's a familiar sound, one that she has heard many times before, though it is rare to hear it. At this hour, she rises from her chair, her feet silent on the cool wooden floor, and moves toward the door, her heart quickening slightly at the sound of the footsteps. They are steady, deliberate, the kind of footsteps that tell you someone knows where they are going. As the footsteps draw nearer, Brid opens the door just a crack, peering out into the fog. Standing at the edge of the path is an old figure, tall, with a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The figure doesn't speak at first, but simply stands there in the soft mist, as if waiting for something. For a moment, Brid doesn't recognize the figure, but then it shifts, and she sees the familiar outline of her neighbor, old Tom Doyle, one of the oldest men in the village. He's as weathered as the stone walls, with a face full of lines that seem to have been etched by time itself. "Ah, Brid." Tom's voice cuts through the silence, soft but steady. "Didn't mean to disturb you, but I thought I might stop by for a moment. The fog's thick out here tonight, and I couldn't help but wonder if you were awake." Brid opens the door wider, her face lighting up with a smile. "Come, you're always welcome. Come in, come in." It's a quiet night, isn't it? Tom steps into the warmth of the cottage, shaking the mist from his coat as he closes the door. Behind him, he's a man of few words and even fewer steps these days. Most of his time is spent in the fields, tending to what remains of his small farm. But tonight, the mist has drawn him in, as it so often does. Like a quiet invitation to pause, to reflect, Brid gestures to the fire, inviting him to take a seat by the hearth. He nods and settles into the chair opposite hers, his eyes resting on the flames, their flickering light soft against the shadows of the room. "Beautiful night," Tom says, his voice low, almost contemplative. "The fog does something to the world, doesn't it? Makes everything feel a bit softer, a bit more but still." Brid nods, her gaze shifting to the window. The fog outside, heavy and thick, seems to envelop everything, turning the familiar landscape into something dreamlike, as if the world has been wrapped in a soft veil. It's a night where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where the familiar, everyday world is transformed into something quiet and profound. It's a night for reflection, for slowing down, for allowing the stillness to wash over you. Tom leans back in his chair, his eyes never leaving the fire. He seems lost in thought, as if the rhythm of the flames is guiding him to some quiet place within himself. Brid watches him for a moment, understanding that sometimes words are unnecessary, that sometimes it's enough to simply sit in silence and let the world speak for itself. After a long pause, Tom breaks the silence again, his voice soft but full of meaning. "It's funny, Brid, how the fog changes everything, makes things seem farther away, but at the same time closer. It's as though the world becomes smaller, more intimate. You can't see as far as you'd like, but you feel everything around you more deeply." Brid takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. There is a truth in what he says. The fog, the stillness, has a way of quieting the noise of the world, of drawing everything in closer, making each moment feel more present, more alive. It's as though the mist carries with it the possibility of peace, of letting go, of surrendering to the moment and finding solace in its embrace. As the evening stretches on, the fire burns low, the last embers glowing softly in the hearth. The fog outside continues to drift, swirling around the village like a soft, unspoken memory. And Brid, sitting in the warmth of the cottage, surrounded by the quiet comfort of the night, feels the stillness wrap itself around her, like a blanket, like the fog itself, and in that stillness, she feels the world slow to a gentle, peaceful stop. The night is far from over, but for now, in this moment, there is no rush. There is only the quiet comfort of the present, the soft hum of the world outside, and the peace that comes from knowing that the fog, like all things, will lift in its own time. And when it does, the world will continue on as it always does. But for now, it is enough to simply be here in the quiet of the evening, with the mist, the fire, and the stillness. As the evening deepens, Brid sits in quiet reflection, the last embers of the fire flickering softly, casting a warm glow across the room. Outside, the mist lingers, soft and heavy, shrouding the village in a blanket of stillness. The night feels eternal, as if time has paused to take a breath. She finds herself drifting into memory, thinking back to the days when her mother would sit with her by the fire, telling stories of the land, of the past, of their family. The warmth of her mother's presence, the gentleness in her voice, the way she would pause to let the silence stretch between words. These memories wrap themselves around Brid like the softest wool. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of her life, and now those stories live in her heart, woven into the fabric of who she is. One memory in particular stands out, one of her mother's quiet teachings: the earth never hurries, Brid, and neither should you. That simple phrase, so gentle yet so profound, has stayed with Brid, guiding her through the years. It is a lesson in patience and living at the pace of the land, and savoring each moment rather than rushing toward the next. As the fire fades to embers, Brid feels her mother's presence beside her, just as it has always been. She smiles softly, her heart full of gratitude, and lets the stillness of the night wrap her in warmth. The world may change, but these memories, these quiet teachings, are timeless.